let's go and start with relocation reports, because this kind of bookended the week, right? Remember, it was Monday and it was Crane's Chicago Business in conjunction with Boob Nightingale on the reports that Jerry would possibly be open to selling the team and or relocating because the stadium lease is coming up 2029. I don't think it's 2028 as Boob listed today in his notebook, but a lot of ideas thrown out. Soldier Field area, Arlington Heights is a possibility, and you also had United Center area as a possibility. So a lot to go off here, but initial thoughts to the prospect of the White Sox possibly relocating.
Not a huge fan, obviously. This team's been in this ballpark my entire life. Not a huge fan of the thought of having to trek down to the Soldier Field area, assuming that would need the Bears to move, which seems all but going to happen at this point.
They're going to move. They
matter
just don't know where as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, we talked about this a little bit earlier this week, Steve, where you said, could the city of Chicago possibly lose not one, but two teams here within the next decade? And, the proposition of moving the White Sox to Soldier Field probably makes a lot of sense for the city in terms of having them in that area on that property. But the parking's nightmarish. Getting in and out of that area is a disaster.
You're not excited about tailgating in McCormick Place, Tony?
No, I'm not excited about tailgating in McCormick Place. Not one bit. We've got the perfect tailgate set up where we are right now. You throw Arlington Heights out there. Fuck that. I don't want to move this team farther north. That's stupid to me to have to think about, all the things that'll get said about the White Sox being on the north side in the suburbs. It's not the mentality or the
brand, the identity, the brand, right?
Yeah, it's the brand. It would be hard to market that brand.
Not that the brand's doing too well these days, but historically,
Yes, facts. But those two options don't really do it for me. I think if you look at the recent Jerry Reinsdorf purchase of some land over near the United Center, that could make some sense. Remains to be seen where exactly they would put that ballpark. I don't even know if the land that he purchased was big enough to hold a Major League Baseball stadium, but he seems to have some interest in that area over there near the United Center. I don't know. It would be really hard for me to envision the White Sox playing somewhere else than 35th and Shields.
Yeah, just real quick technicality on the United Center sort of area one. If I remember correctly, that essentially looked like part of a parking lot that was purchased by the Reinsdorf group over there. And I think we all, it's not official, but I think we all can kind of assume that is a stadium, the programming, digital programming, endeavor, sort of expansion project in the works. But that was the only technicality I had on it. Steve, you've got some thoughts.
Yeah. The Arlington Heights thing would just be a fucking nightmare. That just is absolutely horrendous to even think about. Basically, if that is something that were to happen, I would then basically be able to go to opening day and then pretty much only weekend games. Because for me to get to a game on a weeknight, just no way that would possibly happen. One of the things I'm almost wondering about is, with this idea of them, in Arlington Heights, conceivably you would think that it would be somewhere geographically close to where that loser football team would be moving to. Would the city of Arlington Heights, and their extortion efforts of their taxpayers, would they think it's more palatable if they had two teams there? So this way you could make use of that space kind of year round from a sports standpoint and from an entertainment standpoint. Is that maybe one of the things that they're trying to position is, were the Bears trying to kind of sweeten their deal a little bit by going to the Arlington Heights and saying, hey, what if we get the Sox? What if we bring them up there? How could that help us? So we can play a little tinfoil hat time. I don't know if it's too early in the episode for that right now, but there's that possibility. I think in my world, the way that I would kind of rank these things and what I would want, I mean, Sal makes a great point here saying that I want the team to move just so that we can get rid of the Southside jerseys. I'm all for that. I retweeted something earlier today from a follower of mine who said that, the Sox, moving to Arlington Heights, the only good thing that would come out of it is we would be able to get rid of those Southside jerseys once and for all. That would be a positive. I won't disagree with that.
We've got a flood of comments in here. It's great. Join the comment section on YouTube on Hip Sportsnet. But hey, another question there. Will the Guitar Center in Arlington Heights stay? We appreciate you, LA.
That's a great question. That's a great question. But if I'm ranking the sites here, I think historically, if you look at it, the idea of being at 35th and Shields, I mean, that is very symbolic of this organization and when they came to here from Minneapolis, or excuse me, from St. Paul back in the 1900 season with the starting of the American League when they were the charter franchise. So, them being at 35th and Shields is very symbolic, I think, in that regard. If you had, I think, serious ownership, that area is ripe for development purposes, and you really could do some pretty creative and innovative things if you had the right developers come in there and turn that area into a little bit more of a tourist attraction. But Jerry Reinsdorf has always kind of frowned upon that for whatever the reason. So I would want it to be there. If it's not going to be there, bring them on down to Tinley Park. Super convenient for all of us. I know that. There's a lot of space. You can just bulldoze the old mental institution that's over there right off 183rd in Harlem. You got tons of space right there. Or you bulldoze Odyssey Fun World on Harlem, or Lincoln Way North High School that is just literally sitting there doing nothing. You got a lot of space over there. You could even put it by the Tweeter Center, whatever it's called right now. You got your little entertainment district right there. You got a concert venue. You got the stadium. You built some bars and some restaurants around there. You could have a little battery right there in Tinley Park. So that's another option. I say that would be my number 2. Number 3, I think the United Center idea, where exactly that would go, would be kind of interesting to see. West Loop is really a changing area. I had a couple of dinners down there last week as part of my day job, and it's honestly hard to even recognize that neighborhood from when I was working down there consistently 6 or 7 years ago. It's changed so much now at this point. And if you were able to put a ballpark near the United Center, that would be an interesting dynamic. So it's going to really be fascinating to see how all of this plays out here over probably the next 3.5 years, because that's about how much time we've got to have a decision made.
Yeah, and I like Sal's comment here because I'm not in favor of the United Center move that you just talked about, despite all of the kind of uprising that's going on in the West Loop. I agree that the area has grown and spread out that way towards the UC. But he says keep the Sox away from Connor Bedard. No Sox at the United Center. That's very true. We do not want that stink of the White Sox, wearing off on a generational project.
And that's, look, that's a very valid point because, and I've talked about this a number of times here, everything went downhill for the Sox when that loser running back threw out first pitch at a game in August of 2021. Everything has been downhill for the White Sox since then. They got the stench of those losers on them. So let them go up to Arlington Heights, stay the fuck away from the White Sox. And right now, given the state of the organization, keep the Sox away from Connor Bedard. Let's get some cops back up there at the UC.
Yeah, I would not. It sucks. I do like the 35th and Shields location for all those reasons that you mentioned, for ease of access there. But I'm wondering, does the guaranteed rate field as it currently stands need to be torn down for them to stay there? I think that's a sticking point, and we won't know exactly right now because we're still a few years off on that in terms of the 2029 lease through that place. But if say they really did want to, just in theory, does that place need to come down, or does it need to be renovated? I know there was talk about possible retractable roof. Can't really put that on a new building. You might as well just build a new one there. So I'm just wondering if that was even an option on the table, salvaging that place there.
Look, I'm all for a retractable roof so that we don't have to live in Jerry's world with these rain delays. In fact, I almost find it interesting that he's in favor of having the retractable roof, knowing how much money he makes off of those games that, we all show up to, spend 3 hours at the park, that are eventually canceled and turn into a doubleheader. I'm just thinking out loud here, you can't put it on that stadium. So I would think, yes, the stadium does need to come down. Um, it's going to happen at some point. I'm wondering if you put it back on the plot that was the original Old Comiskey Park, which would mean that Lot B wouldn't be a thing anymore. But that said, you would just sort of transition it back and forth the same way they did back in the early 90s there, and face the ballpark the right way. I think it would be, a great spot for it. There's a lot of history there. You want to play the whole history game. I think that's your biggest marketing ploy. It's a great story. You could put a roof on that and you can face it directly towards the city as everybody wants to. And
Would
yeah,
you
it's a
be able to
win-win
see
for
the
everybody.
skyline? I always see those edits. Would you even be able to see the skyline from this positioning, or would there be some other knockdowns required behind it?
I mean, I think you'd still be able to see some of it, depending on where you're sitting, though. Like, at least
Right.
if you were upper deck behind home plate, you've got a beautiful view of the skyline, I think, right there.
And I
Lower
think
level,
too,
maybe not.
and I would think it would also depend on the structure, and from an architectural standpoint, how it gets built, because you see all those pictures. I mean, I've got a picture behind me right now hanging up on my wall from that 1990 season when the new park is being built, and you just see how much higher elevation wise the new ballpark is versus Old Comiskey. And so would they maybe try to scale things down a little bit? And I think that if they were to get a new park and put it in that location, they need to really look at PNC Park in Pittsburgh as kind of the framework. A park that is only 2 levels on it. You've got your upper deck, none of this split upper deck bullshit with the 5 levels that you see at every new park now. Get away from that. Very, very compact. If anybody wants to go and really look at something unique, there was a concept that was pitched to Jerry back in 87 or 88 for Armour Square Park. I think I've shown both of you guys that. This is a time where you could try to do something really bold to try to recreate some of that kind of nostalgia. So I think if you built it the right way, you could definitely get the skyline in there.
Interesting. Yeah, I do remember seeing that. Was it CBS kind of did a full highlight and had like those renderings and graphics that you were just discussing there, Steve. All those proposed in there. So I mean, it's an interesting concept. I like the location as is, but unfortunately, I'm thinking that relocation is much more on the table than I think I'd previously thought.